Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson, how are we doing today? I'm fresh off a turkey cooking contest win, fresh off of up in Cleveland. Fantastic time with Absolute Intense Wrestling. WrestleCade weekend, did a TNA panel, got to sign a lot of autographs, talk to a lot of my world listeners, got to crack Matt Cardona over there with a guitar. Roll Tide, they eked one out. I did Vissen this weekend, some gambling picks, Conrad, and I'll have you know, they pressed me on a winner between Bama and Auburn, and I said, Bama will not cover, but they will win. So there was a lot of good chatter there. Anyway, fantastic. So I'm ready to rock and roll today.
Well, I'm going to start at the end and work my way back because there was some controversy in some of the things you said there.
Not really. Let's talk. We got a big topic, a big show to go on. No need to rehash. You don't want to talk about, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but no need to dive into anything like you're saying is mistruths or anything like that.
Well, the whole Alabama thing, I asked Cassio Kid right before kickoff, hey, what was the line on this? And he said 20.5. And I said, buddy, if I knew where I could place that action right now, I'd bet everything in my bank account on Auburn plus 20.5. That is not a game where 20.5 should ever be the line. And 4 overtimes later, we all know that. But we didn't need an overtime to decide that you did not win the turkey cook-off.
Sure did. You didn't even show up.
Whoa. I posted pictures, but pictures don't tell the story. It's taste. And I got 26 witnesses here. Well, they're no longer here, thank God. But I had 26 witnesses that would tell you that my turkey beat your turkey. And so much so that I'll have you know for Christmas, because I did 2 this year and they were, disintegrated, evaporated, vanished Thanksgiving night. I'm not going to do 1 for Christmas. I'm not going to do 2 for Christmas. I'm doing 3. And I'm going to crush you. I'm going to do 1 Cajun. I'm going to do 1 that's been brined for 3 days. And then I'm going to do 1 fried, my first fried turkey.
Conrad, your bird looks sick when you posted the picture. I'm just being completely honest with you. It literally looked like it was malnourished. And I don't know if you overcooked it or it was.
I cooked it to 163 degrees and then tinfoiled it. So I'll have you know it was perfect.
And poor Eric, I guess it's how they do it in Wyoming or something like that. It looked like a burnt pheasant or something along.
Eric did look flavorless. You at least had a cool presentation. But I mean, Eric got 3rd place. I'll give you 2nd.
Flavorless.
Eric's looked flavorless. It did. It looked like, see, here's the thing. There's a reason that people only talk about turkey on Thanksgiving and Christmas, because most people overcook them. Most people dry them out. Mine and yours are not dry. And I bet Eric's wasn't dry, but I bet Eric's was pretty flavorless if I had to guess.
Oh, that's stiff. Well, the vertical roaster is the thing that I have on you guys. That is the only way.
Whoa. First of all, you're cooking tiny turkeys for that to be the case. You can't get one of my monster birds on a vertical stand.
What's your bird weight?
28 pounds.
Oh, Lord. That thing, you sure that wasn't like a pig? Did you roast a pig? That wasn't even a turkey. The other white meat. You did pig, didn't you?
No.
You can't cook a 28-pound bird and have it taste good. Mine was a perfect 20 pounds, vertical roasted in the big green egg.
The move is you do a drip. I use the same thing you do. I do the place setter, and then I do the dripping pan, but then I've got a vertical roasting pan or a horizontal roasting pan on top of that. And that's the only way I can get a monster like that, like you in the 90s, a steroid freak, right? To fit inside of a big green egg. I mean, I had, you know what, in hindsight, I should have called mine Big Turkey Pump. That's what I should have done with mine.
Big Papa was in rare form. I didn't get to see him. We were both busy on Saturday, but with this Wolverines winning, he was probably doing math equations, running around, making that score 15 different ways how to get to that equation. But
hey, let me ask you, since we're talking about college football, and by the way, we are getting to Mayhem 99. We'll be there in just a minute, folks. Before I do, though, I want to ask, since you are this self-professed gambling whiz now, and you're a handicapper extraordinaire, if you will.
I nailed them all.
This weekend is essentially the national championship. Now, some of you yahoos in the Northeast or the Midwest or down in Texas or Florida, you're going to argue some of that. But the reality is, anywhere you slice it, when number one plays number four in the SEC championship conference, and between them, they have one loss. And the team with one loss is the reigning defending national champion. And the head coach is named Nick Saban. And he's coaching his old protege in the state of Georgia for essentially a home field advantage for Georgia. All eyes are going to be on the SEC this weekend. So who you got? Georgia or Alabama? And by the way, Georgia is a betting favorite.
I know that, Conrad. See, you want to call me self-professed gambling expert? I was called again this week. I had to step out of my autograph session. If you could have seen the look on Karen's face when I have my iPad and I've got my earbuds in and I'm lining up the Skype video right during the signing and all that, she's like, "What are you doing?" I said, when they call, I got to do it. Had to do a live hit. But we talked about this rivalry week, and I picked the LSU game because I said they weren't going to let Coach O go out, all the picks. But they went ahead and jumped to the following weekend because the game was already set, and they pressed me. And, man, I don't know if it really pains me to say this because it is what it is, but I'm doing this in honor of Big Lair. I have to say, you just can't bet against Saban in the big game. And Georgia, I think it's 2.5 or 3. I'm not sure what it was. I know they were talking about it on Saturday. But
6.5 is the line.
6.5?
As you and I are recording this.
It jumped. It had to have jumped because I don't think he was out on Saturday. I may be wrong. But anyway, I don't think you can. If Bama's getting 6.5 points, roll Tide. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just don't think you can bet against Saban and the quarterback play. Look, they've had issues with the interior linemen, both sides of the ball, but look, Saturday was not a stellar performance in any stretch of the imagination, but it's still the Iron Bowl. But no, roll Tide Saturday. It is for the national championship. And what's going to be really interesting is when Bama wins, and now Georgia's got a loss, and Bama's got it's going to be the Final Four this year. Man, let the debate begin today.
If Alabama wins, then Alabama's in and Georgia's in. Georgia would stay in if they lost to Alabama.
Sure.
So the question becomes, who are the other two? And I think everybody agrees stupid ass Cincinnati is going to sneak in. Who do you put in that final spot?
Cincinnati's going to get boat raced. I mean, come on. I mean, they got that win over Notre Dame early, and I'm just thinking this team is not I just don't think they're Final Four. So who do we got? We've got Notre Dame.
A lot of people think Michigan's going to be that fourth team.
Michigan, because Ohio State popped out. I got to get mad. Yeah, I think Michigan. I think the Wolverines, the big powerhouse, the powers that be. Boy, I'm already jumping ahead into the episode naming. See how I name drop the powers that be? But no, I think Michigan because I don't know, man.
As we're talking right now, Michigan's number 2, so it's hard for me to imagine Michigan won't be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you had your druthers, would you pick Notre Dame over Cincinnati, or would you leave Cincinnati in there?
I'd pick Notre Dame. I think they're a much better team. But how can you when they have the loss? I get that.
What about Oklahoma State? Fresh off of beating Oklahoma, would you put Oklahoma in over? Get even more from the hottest new podcast going, My World, with Jeff Jarrett over at adfreeshows.com. Let me get granular here for a minute, folks. Not only can you get the entire My World episode library with 0 ads, new episodes come your way each week early, ad-free, and on video starting at just $9 a month. We've also got tons of exclusive My World bonus content waiting for you, plus unique interactive experiences with your old pal, Double J. You get to jump on and ask Jeff questions, and if you joined us in Chicago this year for Top Guy Weekend, you got to hang out the entire weekend. That's just 30 cents an episode, 100% the best value in all of wrestling. Strut on over to adfreeshows.com right now to sign up. Cincinnati.
Yes.
So you don't see in your head, Cincinnati is not number 4. Hell, they're not number 5. They're not even number 6, maybe. Or maybe they are 6.
Correct. Their quarterback is a red shirt, medical major. No, they're a good team, but I don't think they're in that upper echelon. I just don't.
Well, we agree. It'll be Georgia, Michigan. Now, here's where it starts to fall off for me. I don't think Alabama can get it done. I think there's problems on the offensive line. I don't think the defense is where we would like for it to be. I think Georgia's got our number. I think Georgia's the best team in football this year. And I actually am coming around on Michigan, and I think they're legit. If it was Alabama, Michigan, I think Alabama could beat them. If it was Alabama, Oklahoma State, or Alabama, Notre Dame, I don't think there's any trouble there. Get out of here, Cincinnati. Send me your hate tweets. But to me, Georgia's just head and shoulders above everybody. I think Georgia's probably the best team in the country, and Alabama is the second best. And I guess Michigan's probably third.
All right, let me ask you, who's Georgia been tested by?
Well, that's a great question because, you know, when you look at the SEC this year, they're not what maybe they have been in other years. So I hear you, but they're getting tested this week. No doubt about it.
And I give Saban 6.5. Wow. That's, folks, get in now. Get in now on Bama.
All right. Well, let's get into Mayhem 1999 now. We're back to My World. We've, I guess we should remind everybody, our first episode was back when you put a pea shooter in Vince McMahon's belly and held him up for money. And you might want to listen to that one before this one if you haven't already. But before we do, let's talk about your stock options transaction with the WWF. I think that's a super underrated portion of the story. Remind everybody that even though you're leaving, you still get to participate in the WWE stock. How does this go? How do you make sure it still happens? Talk me through that.
You want to explain? Because you're always much better at explaining. Stock options, public. So my contract expired on Saturday night. I worked the China match on Sunday, Nitro on Monday, and it went public, if I remember correctly, on Tuesday. Yeah, on Tuesday. So during this whole time, and we've gone into it, and hey, not to digress too much, but over the weekend at WrestleCade, it was really cool feedback when I would hear folks come up and how they would start and say, hey, the first episode I listened to, a lot of them did say Owen. And then I went into TNA or whatever it is, and how folks sort of bounce around between episodes, Conrad. And you're the pro at this game, but it was fascinating to me that that people may pick one episode that a buddy shared with them, and then all of a sudden they get into this and get into that. And we did the TNA panel discussion, and folks came up to me afterwards and, hey, you mentioned this on the podcast. Anyway, I thought it was real cool. So anyway, so off of the China episode, I just sort of laid out the timeline, and with the, you know, and the talent that was and you know, other folks that were a part of, we'll call it the privately held company of Titan Sports, WWF. You were getting preferred stock options, and that is basically you can buy stock at the price that it is opening at, which was $17 at the time. And so I want to say it was 10,000 shares. I wish, man, I should have looked that up. But anyway, a certain amount that I got to purchase. And so on the entire, after I, you know, basically came to the agreement with WCW, you know, Vince had been traveling the world, literally meeting with investment bankers, taking his company public. But we had our conversation after I had already signed with WCW, but before I got to the building. And Vince was super professional and said, hey, you're going to be, you know, the purpose of the call was, you're going to be there on Sunday. And I assured him, yes. And then, you know, he basically said something to the effect, I wish I would have been more engaged on this, but it is what it is. We're going to take care of things and figure this out. And, oh, by the way, Jeff, your stock options are still available if you so choose, which he didn't have to do.
By the way, the stock opened at $17, just as you said. The next day, at the end of the next day, the stock was up 98% to $35.56. How about that?
It went as high as 39 that day, I believe, if I remember. And my investment guy said, let's unload some here day one. And I think we sold around 32, 33. I think it was as my stock guy said, let's just go for the 2-bagger and call it a day. And then
you doubled your money. Yeah.
Yeah. So, he didn't have to do that, but that, you know, when you get real granular on the pea shooter and Jeff held Vince up, and the reality of that whole situation is that he paid me my back pay, in Cleveland, as well as 2 days later, still let me exercise my stock options, which he could have stopped easily. Monday at Nitro, I had a call with my stock guy. After, you know, the day after the pay-per-view, I had a call with my investment guy, as well as Vince's office. Obviously, he went on to Raw, but just making sure we were coordinating things and things were signed off on, and the right hand was talking to the left hand as far as getting all that done. So, you know, it's been a fun journey on my world, dispelling everything, but that in and of itself, the stock options, because that's post me holding him up with the 357 and the 238s.
It's it says a lot about Vince. I mean,
yeah,
that he was not spiteful, or, I mean, my point is, if it really ended poorly for real, that wouldn't have happened.
Oh God, hell no.
Yeah.
At all. Like zero.
So you finish up at No Mercy. You know, of course, that's the Good Housekeeping match and everything that happened in episode 1 in our archives. You fly right to Philadelphia for Monday Nitro. Prior to getting on that plane, had you had any discussions with Vince Russo about initial creative, or was it just, we'll show up and figure it out?
Show up and I was going to be told, because that last 7 days, I'll call it, or no, not even that, because I think we went through this. I did Raw in Atlanta, SmackDown in Birmingham. And then that's where I finished up going into and then we did a house show on Saturday, a live event on Saturday, and then the pay-per-view on Sunday. I was working and a lot of moving parts, and it was a stressful time in my business brain during that time, but there was no conversations other than making sure the WCW agreement, all that was in place. And hey, am I really doing this? And, they were making sure, okay, you're going to do what? You really are going to go work for Vince after you'd agree with us? Just all the ins and outs of that. And so, no, there was no calls, none of that. WCW, sent me the airline. I still thought that was kind of fascinating. So I leave my house in Nashville on a WWF paid ticket. And in the middle of that, WCW bought me a ticket from Cleveland to Philly. I had a car service there and picked me up and head on over to the arena.
So just to add context to where we are in wrestling, you're the only guy at this point in 1999 who's leaving the Red Hot World Wrestling Federation to go jump ship to a sinking ship named World Championship Wrestling. You're obviously being brought in on a top spot, but you're still walking into a locker room with Hulk Hogan, Sid Vicious, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Lex Luger, Bill Goldberg, Ric Flair, Bret Hart, and Sting. Any second thoughts about this at any point, or was it all about the money and the miles?
Tell you a little story that happened about, 3 hours ago. Conrad, I was patiently waiting on you, but no, Karen just said, hey, what's the topic about today? And I told her, and I said, so Mayhem, and it really sort of fits this episode in so many ways. Mayhem in my career, Mayhem that I'm walking into that I didn't even realize, Mayhem as far as the whole, China situation and the whole episode 1 of My World and holding Vince up and the stock options. There were so many different moving parts. And she's like, well, what's the episode about? I said, I think Conrad is giving me the opportunity and we're going to get to discuss. At the very core of it, I didn't want to leave. And I think there's a real undercurrent in the whole scenario that I knew that my future, no matter how much I wanted to look through it through rose-colored glasses, and we've discussed this and hashed it and all that kind of stuff. And me and Jim Ross have had these conversations, but Jim was, we'll call it player personnel of running the team, however you want to say it. And by his lack of negotiation, and I don't want to call it lowball, but there was no upward movement. And the business was red hot. So I knew where Jim valued me at, and he's the one with literally the payoff pencil. I just knew that I'm beating a dead horse. I'm beating my head against the wall. I need to move on. And knowing that the 83 weeks, if you will, was over, and that Austin was red hot and DX was red hot. And, yes, I'd heard about all the, we'll call it, dysfunction and upheaval and lots of just, there wasn't a lot of good locker room stories, so to speak, coming out of it. And you said jumping from a rocket ship to a sinking ship is pretty appropriate here. But I thought that it was the best career move for me because I just didn't think I had a future at a productive future at WWF.
The idea being, instead of being, shall we say, not featured and just maybe glad to be there, maybe an afterthought, even if you're on the winning team, it might be worth rolling the dice and seeing if you can be positioned as a top guy and maybe regain some glory with the company that not too long ago was the top dog. I mean, I think a lot of people forget the context of 1999. You're just 1 year removed, less than that, actually.
Less.
From being the hottest wrestling promotion around. It's not like it became WCW in 01 right away. It would take you 2 years to really kill this company off personally.
Yeah. Well, it's a skill set, but nothing happens overnight.
But still, the idea is, hey, rather than just be an afterthought and really not be featured, if I think I can be featured over here, and it's guaranteed money, because being featured is a nice way of saying in the WWF, making more money. And I think sometimes we get the two C's confused. Jim Ross calls them cash and creative. In the WWF, if you're in a featured spot, you're going to make more money. In WCW, you're going to make more money if you negotiated a good contract. In WCW, it was less about politics of where am I on the card relative to my pay, and more about how good of a negotiator am I. And if you know going in, I'm getting X, you alleviate some of those concerns you had working for Vince, right?
For sure. And, Eric, and I'll put it on Eric because there was there was certainly a mindset that if you go in there and kick ass and prove yourself, you're going to get a bump in pay. And a lot of folks got it mid-contract. Bill Goldberg, there are folks in there that you didn't have to wait for the contractual year to come around. You would get bumps, all that. And I was from the mindset, candidly raised this way: bet on yourself, have confidence in yourself. If not, it's probably not going to work out anyway. And so I was willing to bet on myself. I knew that there was a lot of guys making a lot of money. And again, I always reference back to the territory days. We can have essentially the same card and draw 3,000 people in Memphis and shoot the right angle. And, oh, bingo, there's 6,000 people the following Monday night with essentially the same card. I mean, literally, Lawler get the right opponent and it something click here and something click there. And just the different stars align, you can jump. So I didn't think it was anywhere. Nobody could have predicted that WCW would have literally said, game, set, match. Not only are we discontinuing, Vince is buying the library. Nobody could have predicted that. So, yeah, I was willing to bet on myself, knew that it was an incredible roster. And I was, all those guys you just mentioned, I don't say way younger than them, but I was definitely on the young side of that. So let me get in there and be the bump taking heel and see how things pan out.
So let's talk about the contract. Wade Keller in the Torch would describe your contract as an incentive laden based contract, which is something Bill Bush, who's now running WCW with Eric recently exiting, thought was important at the time to sort of change the dynamic of the locker room and maybe control some expenses. Here's what I mean. Hogan's on a guaranteed $4.6 million deal. Goldberg's got 5.1. Brett's at 2.6. Nash is at 1.4. Sting's at 1.9. And Savage is at 1.6. So we've got some big time guaranteed contracts here just in those half a dozen players. Do you remember there being a lot of discussion about incentive based stuff in your contract? I know you mentioned before that it's a certain number of dates, but you can go over, and that's for blank per show. Sort of talk me through that.
It was very simplistic. It was a downside, and I got paid. Dadgummit, the numbers, Conrad, and I know you've got the research, but anyway, once I could get paid for more shows, it was incentive based, just what Wade wrote. But the more I worked, the more I got paid once it got to a certain level. And I didn't mind that at all. And I knew coming in the door, well, let me say this. I knew before I came in the door and had heard those big money contracts that you've got right there, it was guaranteed. So there was no incentive for those guys to get on a plane and go work a house show. None. Like none. And when I was going through the research and looking at it, and I'm thinking, okay, on this episode, culture kept popping in my brain, Conrad, what we're going to talk about. And, the inside baseball references that you like to refer to, calling it inside baseball, but the contracts and, the origins of Slapnuts that we're going to get to, but the incentive based and walking in the door and, it was the right, hindsight's 2020, but those guys that didn't have to make live events, that was the writing on the wall. But I was willing, and Bill Bush made it very clear to me on the phone calls, this is the kind of deal. And I said, hey man, I'm all for it. Sign me up. I want to work. And when I work, I want to get paid more.
based on what I see from the courthouse records, thanks to David Bixenspan and Chris Harrington, the start is October 18th, 1999. And of course, you're going to be paid through on this contract October 17th, 2002. Year one, 275. Year two, 300. Year three, 325. They showed you at 115 days maximum. And if you worked more dates than that, you'd make $2,500 per shot. So if they ran 116 shows on show 116, you're owed an additional 2,500. If they booked you more than 185 days, well, that would have to be approved by you. They couldn't just arbitrarily book you for that. And they would pay you a $3,000 bonus per show at that point. So show 186 would be $3,000 instead of 2,500. Every pay-per-view you were on was another 7,500, and they gave you a $30,000 signing bonus. That's what we have from courthouse records. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah. So the pay-per-view, that's what because I think we almost got into this discussion, Huntsville. I don't know, but yeah, the pay-per-view bonus, I got Cricket Wireless money. There were some sponsorship deals that I got. But yeah, it was incentive laden, just like we just previously discussed, which I was all for. Maybe it was a JJ Dillon conversation that I had with my father. Maybe it was me and Kevin Sullivan conversation. I just knew they were having trouble, guys making towns. And I'm like, book me. I'm Nitro, Thunder, live events, personal appearances, and I think days worked. The definition of days worked didn't have to be, it could be doing a commercial shoot or doing an on sale. Because in the past, in 96, I'd done several on sales when tickets went on sale, which would have counted as a day'd work. So getting your days counted didn't actually have to mean putting on your boots and tights.
I got you. So let's talk about it. You show up to Nitro. How was the reception amongst the boys?
It was fine. I mean, I don't remember anything one way or another, but I don't say everybody, but I knew a lot of folks there. Hell, it had only been 2 years since I was there, but no, I knew most of the guys, and, again, growing up in the business, been around it, going into locker rooms and look everybody in the eye and say hello. And if you don't, say what's up. And if you don't, introduce yourself and have a little chit chat, get their background, give them your background, and go from there.
Well, we've heard on this show that you, even though no one else has ever said it out loud, you claim to be a part of the clique in the WWF. So I'm sure when you got to WCW, you just walked over to Kevin Nash and threw him the old 2 Sweet, and you guys became riding partners again and all that, right?
Well, I actually gave him the 4 Horsemen sign. Then I said, but hey, brother, I'm for life. You know how it goes, Conrad. I gave that to a couple of folks at WrestleGate this weekend. They loved it. And then the 2 Sweet. So you know how it goes, Pally.
So we talked last week on the Deborah episode.
I was pre-click, by the way, for clarification, pal.
Well, you were in the backstage click with Scott and Sean and Kevin Nash and Waltman and all those guys.
Dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
No, you were probably in DX too, right?
I didn't kill that faction.
You talked last week on the Deborah episode about your first conversation with Vince after you left. When did that take place?
First conversation with Vince after I left?
Yeah.
So that conversation, I'm not sure. I did not speak with him. Now, I spoke with him when I launched TNA. That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
But I talked to him, I want to say the Friday before the China match. And then obviously I talked to him off and on all day on that Sunday. But I didn't talk to him post leaving. I don't think until I launched TNA.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you arrive to the Elephant Doors here and walk into the First Union Center. You see Vince Russo, Ed Ferrara, and Bill Banks. This has got to feel like a reunion, right? These guys were just with the WWF with you, and now all of you guys have changed jerseys.
I can remember getting to the arena. The production meeting was going on, and I was curious, like, okay, what, now I'm arriving. I'm here. What is going on? I think Bill Banks maybe was one of the first out of those three. I think Vince and Ed were in production, but I can remember seeing production people, the Keith Mitchells of the world, the promoters, the staff, and I'm sure the talent, at Nitro, in these days, they brought so many pieces of talent, some on the show, some not on the show. But
Dave Flair used to joke that they flew in everyone on the roster, and then you would get there and they would say, "Oh, you're not on the show tonight," and some of the guys would fly home the same day.
Lots of guys would fly home the same day, which I used to think, okay, you're getting paid. What is so pressing at home that you don't even want to do the hang around? I always thought that was odd, but hey, David wasn't the only guy. And I get it, frustration, to each his own. But I'm thinking, if you made the effort, I'm sure you packed an overnight bag, unless you had someone at home sick or an emergency you need to get to. Why not hang around just in case, if you've got a passion for this business too? But again, it goes to culture, Conrad. I really, when I was reading these notes, I kept getting prepared for today's show. That word kept coming to mind, culture. What a unique, distinct, drastic, different culture I walked into that it had changed from 96. That unless you're there and can smell it, taste it, touch it, and feel it, it's hard to describe. But I found out real quick. I literally found out really, really quick that the culture was not 96 culture, and it certainly wasn't WWF culture.
So the buzz was out that weekend before you even lose to China that you're leaving the WWF and debuting for WCW. And obviously it's what everybody's talking about on Sunday and Monday online. And this is the infancy of the internet, if you will, here at 99. Does Vince want to capitalize on that? Vince meaning Russo, like when you walk in and you see the production meetings going on and all that jazz, do you remember there being discussion of, hey, you're hot right now, we got to leverage this, we got to keep it going, or what have you?
And see, this is something that, man, I could really go on a rabbit hole here because, and we've talked off camera, on camera, in episodes that, in 1999, you just have to imagine a world without Twitter, without Instagram, without, so when you said there was buzz going on, the word buzz today versus the internet buzz today, as opposed to 99, it's just radically different.
Yes.
And yes, there were some folks, but if you want to go back a generation from that, so this is 99, let's go back to 89 when Lawler's in Mid-South Coliseum and he opened up his bag and he pulls out a Wrestling Observer or a Pro Wrestling Torch, one of those newsletters, obviously not even the digital format, and reading results and opinions and some nonfiction and some fiction. And, but, reading that stuff. So the word buzz, I didn't equate that to the mass audience at ever. So although there were some folks in Cleveland that were aware of the situation, and certainly some folks online, the overwhelming mass majority of the ticket buying consumer TV watcher was not really aware. Yes, there was a 1% of a 1%, or I don't want to get into those numbers, but I just didn't really think that when I say, how are we going to capitalize? Let's capitalize off the hot heel that just came off of Raw and SmackDown, not any internet buzz. Make sense?
Yeah. No, let me ask this, I understand you're off of being this hot heel and you're fresh off TV and all that jazz. As silly as this sounds, once upon a time when Ole Anderson was helping run things for WCW and Ric Flair had just given notice and finished up with Vince McMahon, he left town in a pretty royal fashion. He lost to Mr. Perfect in the Manhattan Center in a loser leaves town match in one of the early episodes of Monday Night Raw. And when he shows up for work, Ole doesn't really want to honor the existing contract that Flair had, in theory, negotiated. because, quote, you just lost on TV. What are you worth to me now? You're fresh off of losing the second biggest title in the hottest promotion, the Intercontinental title, to a woman. This is uncharted territory. So you may have been a hot heel, but now, and let's just put context in this. The most recent time we saw a woman beat a man in WCW, it was when Jacqueline beat Disco.
Yeah.
And so you're at the, and we both think a lot of the real life Glenn, but I'm saying you're this hot heel on TV and you're coming in and we're going to make you a top guy, but we just saw you lose to a woman. Do you remember there being any naysayers, or was China the exception to all women?
I kind of think when you draw the entire big picture, had I not had my run with Razor Ramon and the Road Dogg and the Shawn Michaels in your house match and the Diesel matches and that Double J run 93 to 96. So take that, and then we'll call it for better or worse, the NWA and all the stuff that went on, and how I returned to WWF and did the promo and everything that went with that. But then light a match and the Attitude Era takes off, and again, you sort of have to be in that vibe. And so when you looked at DX from that time frame, China was never thought of, in my opinion. Maybe in the early days she was Triple H's valet, but when it really exploded, she was an equal. Yep. She was such a unique entity, and you talk about super over. And her look, it's not like
I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to run a timeout. I'm not saying I need you to defend it. I'm saying, do you remember there being any pushback from other guys in the business? Because guys these days,
I got
tell stories a lot of times where it just feels like, and you know the deal. We both know guys in wrestling who, when someone walks in the room, oh man, how's it? Oh, great to see you. Oh, they walk out of the room, that motherfucker. We just know guys like that, and we don't have to say any names. You know who they are, and I know who they are. But I'm just saying,
yes,
in this infighting, backbiting, undermining world, do you remember there being whispers of, wait a minute, are we putting him in top? He just lost to a fucking woman.
I don't ever remember that at all. And to the contrary, I can remember a specific conversation. So this, look, for what it's worth, Kevin Nash was a huge fan of the Moolah Guitar Shot and the China program, and he's at the top. Yeah. So he didn't have that mindset. Yes, we've been buddies for, at that time, since 93, but I didn't hear any blowback. I didn't hear that. Do I think it was probably said? Hell yes. But I certainly didn't hear it.
So did you know that Russo was going to be doing a tournament, that he's going to vacate the title and all that jazz? Or do you find out that day, or just talk me through that?
I did not know at all. And going back to the research on this, and this jarred my memory, and look at this, holy smokes. What kind of, I'm going to use the Conrad terminology, I had really forgotten about all that inside baseball. And this is 1999 that went way over people's heads. There was a complete disconnect. I had forgotten all that, or a lot of it. Maybe that's a repress. The brain represses a bad memory unconsciously. But no, I had no idea about the turn. I didn't have any idea about any of the creative. And when you look at the timeline, I don't think Vince had a long time to prepare, because how long he got there? What, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before I did?
Yeah, he had not been there very long. Let me ask about your conversations with Vince, because the narrative has always been out there that, for lack of a better word, you were one of his boys. I don't mean that in a derogatory term, just that you guys were friendly and you could do business together and blah, blah, blah. And I sometimes get the impression, and I don't mean this as any disrespect to Mr. Russo. He and I are friendly. We communicate to this day, think a lot of him, blah, blah, blah. But I get the impression that sometimes he felt like, and he's never told me this, and I've never heard him say this, but perhaps some of these other guys, the Hulk Hogans of the world, the quote unquote big stars, that they didn't want to do business. And it almost came off as disrespectful to him. The idea being, hey, trust me to do my thing, and then you go do your thing. And if he had these ideas and maybe there was pushback, then he would probably feel, hey, they won't do business. But he probably felt like he had an ally in you, not necessarily, I like Jeff Jarrett's talent better than star XYZ. I think he's a better star or bigger star or has more upside than the XYZ star. But Jarrett will do business. Do you think that Russo felt that way about you, that you were going to be more amenable to his ideas than maybe some of the other talent? And maybe he viewed that as almost a little disrespectful to his role or title or responsibility to the organization?
Now we're sitting here in 2021 and hindsight is without question 2020.
Yeah.
But when you look at the reality of the situation, Vince was writing for the WWF magazine in, I'll say 93-ish, 94-ish, and then, became a writer and worked his way up through the ranks. At the end of the day, the real context was he knew that he answered to Vince and only Vince. Okay. Right. He had fallen out and he goes to WCW. And so he had never worked in an environment where he could at least go and argue his point to Vince McMahon and then let Vince make the decision. Now it was, Bill Bush was his boss. And so Bill had no point in Vince, Bill and Vince, there's no comparison. So the short answer is yes, he knew that Jeff Jarrett, the talent, would make suggestions and add, subtract, try to make it better. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go run the play. If that's the best analogy, run the play. And then he walked into a situation and Hulk Hogan, going back to, his whole lineage, we'll call it the AWA, WWF, WWF, all that. And then you go all the way down the list. So he was walking into a scenario with that group that you mentioned earlier and everybody else that did not have that working relationship. Vince Russo and his Long Island accent coming into WCW, he had never worked with Hulk. He had never worked with Bill Goldberg. He had never really worked with Hall and Nash in this manner. It was a whole new ball game. So yes, to your answer is that when he looked down his roster of folks, at least I kind of know Jeff and can, and he'll play ball with my story. So yes.
Does he lay any of that out to you? Does he express any of that? Bro, these guys won't do business, bro. I got big plans for you and you'll actually do them. We're going to do some great shit together, Jeff. Does he say something like that?
No, because that would be almost, and I'm not saying he never did, but certainly in this early time, that would be like confiding in me, but also showing a chink in his armor. He was the boss. He was, I wasn't aware of any of that. But it didn't take long. Not that it was a Russo talent issue. It was that culture issue that, oh, wait a minute. If so-and-so talent doesn't want to go to Wichita and work at the live event, then why in the hell are they going to go out on Nitro and do something they're not comfortable with?
And it's also said in wrestling, and Vince is maybe the king of this, as we hear, never sell, never let them see you sweat, that sort of thing, where if he is having an issue with these guys, that issue exists here between the years. He's never going to espouse it. He's not going to let anybody know. Right.
For sure. And even though Ed got to come in with him, that's still two guys. And you had, and I forget all the names, but let's just say Terry Taylor and Kevin Sullivan. And I may be getting them wrong, but Bill Banks was added to the team, but you still had that creative / production entity units coming together. It still had, at the end of the day, it's Vince Russo picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, Hulk, how you doing, man? How's the weather in Tampa? Oh, great. What you got on your plans? Oh, that sounds good. Well, have you got a few minutes? Sure. Hey, let me run something by you about this Monday on Nitro that we got this idea. Yeah, let me hear it, Vince." And Vince lays it out and it's quiet, a little bit more quiet. And Hulk says, "Well, Vince, let me think on this and call you back." Okay. So that call with 4 or 5 other talents, how's Vince going to write a show when he doesn't really know
what he can or can't do? Yeah.
And so therein lies, going back to my word for this episode, the culture. It's not like you write a show and run it by all these guys and Vince, here's the feedback. And Vince McMahon would go, okay, I'll deal with it on Monday. And he would, it just completely different set of rules.
Did Vince have an idea for your character? I mean, a lot of guys would want to keep their same sort of persona as much as they could from what helped them quote unquote get over. Was he wanting a totally different music, but we're going to keep the guitar? Was any of that discussed in terms of what his vision was for you creatively, just as a persona, as a character, as a look, as a feel?
He did no character development in depth. It was very much, the Jeff Jarrett character of don't piss me off. I mean, and I don't want to say Jeff fighting women or Jeff with a valet. It was, for lack of a better word, the don't piss me off character from WWF moved into WCW. And that don't piss me off character evolved into that chosen one. And I think that sort of came out of, and this is a Russo question, but it would come out of, okay, I'm dealing with this set of parameters and talent and rule book and trying to get things done. I'm going to knight him the chosen one, but I'll read between the lines, just what you went to earlier. He's going to play ball for the most part, with what I write. And so he's the chosen one.
Let's talk about the music. He's not there very long, he being Russo, and you're here on your first day, and you're going to just talk me through the music. Do you have a chance to hear it ahead of time? Do you approve it? Is there any discussion about that? I know it's a little thing, but when you're fresh off of the other show, it's interesting to me how quickly all this has to come together.
So they played generic music, I believe, until the cowboy theme was. Is that what you're asking about? The cowboy?
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, in general, do you go backstage that day in Philadelphia and they say, okay, Jeff, we got these public domain songs, we got it drilled down to these 5, you pick one, or just what's that look like?
It goes back to the how things were. Hey, we got some, because it happened quick. And when I say the whole deal, all things as far as, what was it, 3 weeks, not long. And that's just a Jeff and a few others and Bill Bush and a few others having that discussion. But once it trickles down into production and travel and all that, I'd say it's inside of 7-ish days. And so music on night one it was an afterthought. Maybe not on my part, but I knew, okay, there's only so much we can do. Jimmy Hart being in there, and I knew it was a priority to get music made. So I'd love to know how many episodes it took for us to get the new theme song cranked up. But no, it was, we're going to play this. And maybe somebody came to me and said, hey, here's 3 options. I don't remember. But it wasn't, it was all generic music.
Oh my goodness. Your debut comes right after quite a performance. La Parka defeats Buff Bagwell, and the Observer had this to say. Bagwell came out later in the show without his gimmick, wearing his I'm doing a job face, while La Parka in a grudge match from Thursday and doing nothing on offense and visibly showing he wasn't allowed to, and making La Parka look like an idiot, and then laying down for the pin, getting right up and going something to the effect of, Russo, did I do the job right? And they shoot to the backstage where the undercard wrestlers were watching the monitor, popping, saying the bigger star have to lay down for the underused foreigner who gets no respect. At this point, Jarrett ran in and clocked Bagwell with the guitar. And Jarrett says he's actually the chosen one because he's the closest guy. He's the closest with the guy who has the stroke. That's from the Observer. Is Jerry Jarrett? I mean, I'm going to tag out. Just talk me through this.
Oh, come on, brother. You don't have to tag out. No, it was,
Jerry's not even passed away, and he had to be rolling over in his grave with the creative. Russo, did I do the job right? In my head, your dad had to be like, what the fuck is this? But then you are there in a big moment. I mean, Buff Bagwell was a very well-branded, well-established star to WCW's audience. They knew exactly who this was. He's a big-time heel, and this is a pretty controversial thing, and it would have certainly got some attention, get people talking. and you come out to quite the babyface pop here. I assume it's because they just saw you, not necessarily because they're big Jeff Jarrett fans. Who would admit that in public?
Nobody.
But I'm saying that you were fresh off of TV from the bigger show. My point being, even if you were a diehard WCW loyalist, even you acknowledged the WWF's probably a better show, or certainly it's the more successful show. So when you see a big star jump like this, we're cheering not because we love that guy, but because, hey, it's a star. We're cheering that there's a new star, there's a surprise, that's a fun thing. Take me through what you remember about that and your experience.
So let me ask you, are you saying that the WCW fan in 1999 at this Philadelphia event, do you think that there was, I don't want to put a number on it, that you think the overwhelming response was, hey, I'm here at this show, but really WWF's the better show?
I think they're wrestling fans. I don't think they're and I know people are going to listen to this and argue it and be pissed off, and I get it. But I think there are wrestling fans. I don't think there are WWF fans. I don't think there are WCW fans. I think there are wrestling fans, and by and large, everybody watches everything. Now, not everybody watches everything, but I'm saying, like, there's a lot of guys I'm friends with who say, oh, I hate WWE. I only watch AEW. So you started watching wrestling October a couple years ago? No. You've watched wrestling your whole life and you just prefer AEW now, which is fine. I'm all for that. I understand that. But it's not as if these guys were cheering watching this show like, oh man, look, it's Jeff Jarrett. I wondered what happened to him 2 years ago. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I do. It's a fascinating conversation because research in the pay-per-view industry tells you that there are brand loyal people that, yes, they may watch both programs even to this day,
but they buy one, not the other.
Yeah. And which I think is a whole nother kind of fascinating, whole unique perspective, because when you look at our landscape today, and I know we're going in a rabbit hole. I don't know if you just gave me the signal to.
No. I'm saying I agree. When I was a kid, my dad bought the WWF pay-per-views, and the guy he worked with bought the NWA pay-per-views. And so we'd take our VCR, we would record the WWF pay-per-views, and then dad would take that tape to work. So my dad's work buddy and his kid on Monday night could watch the WCW show. And then we would watch the NWA or WCW show on Monday night. So I get what you're saying. Dad and I both watched WWF and WCW, but we bought one. And my thing is, when either one came to our town, we went, because, we wouldn't necessarily pack up our car and say, let's go to New York City, Dad. But if they're down the street, well, we're going to go, whether it's WWF or WCW, if that makes sense.
That's a whole research, analytics, fascinating question. But with that being said, let's circle back to your question was, you wanted me, or your comment was, walk through that. Again, not a lot of creative. I had zero creative input. I don't know how much time Vince and his team had to think it through. And again, he's walking into, because he lived, eat, breathe, sleep, Stone Cold Rock, Attitude Era, all that. And so in less than a month, you can't understand and learn 80 pieces of talent. You just can't.
Right.
So me cracking Buff over the head and in a La Parka match, and I don't know if that's a Vince took a suggestion from somebody in the room or he wrote it, but it was a simple way to debut Jeff and introduce him to this audience. And when I say the Nitro audience, live and on television, and head down this road, I don't think there was any grand master plan at all, not just for me, but for anybody a month into Vince's tenure. I just don't think that's possible.
So after you lay out Buff with the guitar shot, you grab your crotch and say, hey, Buff, you got your stroke right here. And of course, this is Monday night. So you had a Sunday pay-per-view. So maybe you weren't in church the day before, but Lord, I'm just saying, it feels like you're leaving one set of attitude, creative, maybe edgy content, and we're knee deep in the other one here. After the segment's done, what'd you think? Were you happy with how it went? I mean, the show had 7,400 people in Philadelphia. The show did a 3.3 rating, just to add context. A 3.3 rating, by the way, would be better than any wrestling show on TV now. 7,400
by quite a bit.
I mean, I bet WWE had 2,000 folks in their house show this past weekend. So 7,400 is nothing to sneeze at either. So even though we're saying WCW's on its ass, WCW on its ass still outpaces everything being put out there today.
Yes.
By those two metrics.
Yeah.
But are you pleased with this? Like, hey, I jumped ship, and you didn't jump ship for creative. You jumped ship for cash. And I just want to continue to drive that home. Jeff is in the wrestling business. So we as fans, we like to be critical of the creative, but there's no debating the cash element here. But you come back through the curtain. Are you thinking, well, hey, that went well. Got a good pop. Got a little shine on me. Featured segment. We'll see what happens next week. Or are you like, oof, I don't know about that.
The very top line is that I can remember late 80s, early 90s. I don't know what year Buff debuted, but he's about as much as, Sting's number one, but Buff is right up there in the top, a WCW tried and true talent,
yes.
Heel or babyface, can work, can talk, got a good look. And I cracked him, and it was a hell of a response. And when they saw me roll in the ring, there was before I even hit him with the guitar. So yes, I was very happy knowing that, okay, this is week 1 of 52 to go. But I was happy, and I said, okay, here we go.
Later in that show, I want to mention this because I think this gets overlooked a lot. We see Elizabeth laid out with pieces of broken guitar all around her. And we know you're fresh off of just clocking everybody, even the elderly on Raw. Did Russo want you to hit Elizabeth with a guitar and she wasn't comfortable doing it? Standards and practices wouldn't allow her to do it, or Russo to do it? Did she say no? What do you remember about the whole guitar Elizabeth piece of business?
I don't know why that just caught me funny. You said even the elderly.
Well, I mean, it's reality. You can't go run around hitting 80-year-old people over the head with inanimate objects and me not mention it. I'm going to bring it up.
No, I love it, but I like how you cachet it as if I went around and said, hey, I've hit a young woman, I've hit a young man, I've hit a middle-aged guy. Damn it, I'm not going out there again until I check this box. I want an elderly person.
Yeah. And you did it.
Next would have been handicap, right?
I don't know if we're counting Beetlejuice in that or not, but talk to me about Elizabeth.
He's vertically challenged. No. So you talk about cramming day 1, 10 pounds of crap into a 5-pound bag. It's like, can we not just let Jeff debut and boom, that's it. But then literally chapter 1, oh wait, did he lay out Elizabeth too? I just thought it was overkill, but I wasn't ever implied to be cracking Liz. On the flip side, to Vince's defense, he's trying to get as much chatter and stories and this and trying to book. And that was a lot of times to his detriment and his fault. He tried to give everyone a detailed story. I don't mind giving everybody a slot, but you have to be within reason. But when you try to give everybody a story, nobody has a story, period.
The Elizabeth thing.
Yeah, I was not supposed to have hit her. It's not that she didn't want to take a guitar shot. It was a whodunit. But
I'm wondering though, do you think Russo knew he couldn't do that in WCW? Like, we would hear a lot from Vince in years later that, they wouldn't let me do this. They wouldn't let me do that. He wanted to be edgy, more edgy than they would allow. Well, and I'm wondering, do you think he knew, well, they won't let me do that, I'm not going to pitch it, or what?
Well, let me do that because it's Elizabeth, because it's a female.
Well, Elizabeth, maybe because of the macho thing, even though they weren't together, maybe he thought, oh, I don't know if she would go for that or he would go for that. But I just wonder if he felt like, I can't even bring that up, the idea that we're going to hit women with guitars.
I don't think that would have been it, because they hired him and they wanted the ratings back up. And later I hit midnight, and I'm sort of just going with that vibe. I don't really think it was, we can't hit a woman or we can't hit Elizabeth. I think it was Vince saying, let's start a bunch of stories. That's right. That's my best honest recollection.
So WCW Live is a thing back then, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. It's really the first big time, quote unquote, wrestling podcast. Jeremy Borash, a friend of the show, and Mr. Bob Ryder, may he rest in peace, were the hosts of that program. The WWF was not doing anything like this at the time. They had hired Jeremy, who was a radio guy in Minnesota, I believe. And this is like his first foray into the big time wrestling business. And I think you were on the show right after your debut on Nitro, which obviously gets a lot of people, the quote unquote internet fan, to pay attention. Did you understand the power of that medium, or was this just something they asked you to do and you said, okay?
When Bill Banks came to me and sort of explained what it was, like, now I had done an AOL chat with Bob Ryder. I'd heard about different chat rooms and that kind of stuff. And look, you know me to this day, I'm not a big fancy tech guy by any stretch of the imagination. I can get by well enough, but here's something that I'll give a little teaching moment, Conrad, if you will. Is that all right? No, there is something to this industry. And I was taught this from Lawler, from my dad. Jackie Fargo had a conversation with me, Frank Morrell, consistently. Listen to the people. And there are, if you really learn and have an ear, I don't want to say it's like music, but if you have an ear for things, listen to the people of what they're saying and how they're saying that. So Memphis crowd would be different than a Louisville crowd. Louisville crowd would be different than Evansville, Nashville, and just learning heat, babyface comeback, popping when they come through the curtain, pop when somebody wins. What's the reaction on a DQ? What's the reaction on a double DQ? What's the reaction on a count out? All those different kinds of scenarios and finishes and all that. Learn to listen to the people. I really encourage folks getting into this industry, learn to listen to the folks, to the people. But when I heard this, I'm like, WCW Live, we're actually getting real viewers, instantaneous feedback after they watch the show. Sign me up, Conrad. I couldn't get in there. And I think it's kind of cool that I was on, they asked me to come in. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll get in there. Show one. Because it was quasi in character, out of character, depending on how the flow was. But it was basically, a lot of times out of character. But, the very last Nitro in Panama City, that room with me and Conan and Disco and Jeremy and Bob, you think about as time went on, we were engaged in instant feedback. So I thought that was really, really cool and way ahead of its time.
Let's also mention, you're 1 day removed from the China hold up, blah, blah, blah. So in a 24-hour period, you've lost the Intercontinental title on pay-per-view in a gimmick match to a woman, held up Vince McMahon, been paid from the box office, made a debut on Nitro, interrupted a shoot promo, crushed a guitar over over Miss Elizabeth that we never see, but then over a WCW stalwart, a mainstay, grabbed your ding dong and said, here's your stroke. And then you're on an interview right after on the WCW program for the internet, an internet exclusive. That might be the hottest 24 hours anybody ever had as far as an internet interview to follow up with. I mean, it would probably be, the only thing I could think of would be if Bret Hart debuted on Nitro the night after Survivor Series and then did WCW Live in November of 97, which didn't exist back then. But if it did, that could have been bigger, but I can't think of much else bigger. I mean, kudos to them and you for pulling that together. Unfortunately, Thunder was a tape show, so it happened before you were in WCW, so you're not on that. But we do see you again at Halloween Havoc in Las Vegas. And our research team couldn't find that this ever happened anywhere else for anyone. As far as we can tell, you're the only guy to appear on 2 pay-per-views in a 7-day calendar period for 2 different companies. It never happened with an ECW, WCW, WWF guy, as best we can tell. And Halloween Havoc has really been one of the marquee events. And then here you are. Meltzer would write this. Buff Bagwell came out next saying he had problems with the writers. it was a line delivered to get a pop, and nobody in the audience reacted. When he brought up Jeff Jarrett, there was a reaction. Jarrett came out and they had a short brawl. Lex Luger came out mad at Jarrett for knocking out Elizabeth backstage at Nitro. Luger got the guitar from Jarrett and went to hit him with it, but he moved. And Luger gave Bagwell this totally lame shot with a guitar that was so gimmicked it seemed like it was made out of cardboard. The guitar didn't break as it was supposed to, and Luger then tapped it, I mean lightly, on a turnbuckle pad, and it fell apart, showing everyone how gimmicked it was. Jarrett ran off. Now that's the end of the sentence in the Observer, but I feel like if he kept going, it would say, Jarrett ran off and called Vince to beg for forgiveness because he realized I've made a huge mistake.
Oh boy.
Carry me through the way you feel in the ring. Hey, it's Halloween Havoc. Man, this is a big time show. This is like their SummerSlam, their WrestleMania, and I'm here in a featured segment. This is going to be awesome. Oh, here comes Lex Luger. Buddy, everybody knows Lex and Miss Elizabeth and Buff. I'm right in the middle of it. What could go wrong? And then Lex just destroys your gimmick. You've probably had a few moments like this in your life where you're in the ring and everyone's watching, not just in the arena, but around the world, and something doesn't go well and you want nothing more than for it to be over and to be out of there. And this has to be one of those. And it's only the second time we've seen you. Tell me about it.
Oh, Conrad, I'm not in Kansas anymore. I'm not in Stanford anymore. It's a microcosm, and we would, I'll say this, I would go on to have many moments in this, arriving at the building, getting the format, looking at it. This is great on paper. Hey, can we go at least sort of walk through this? Okay, we're going to walk through it. Can the camera guys be here? No, they're not out there. We can't do this. Just the from top down. And I'll say culture. Vince was obsessive over, because it's we are not a sport. We are entertainment, and not just timing and camera shots, but it all has to work together. And putting a guitar, especially a super duper prop guitar, as WCW would have, putting a guitar in the hands of someone who's not used to having one, it's a recipe for disaster. And Lex meant no harm out of it. And he's, having to carry this out. And again, Vince had, and Russo and Lex probably hadn't worked together on this level. And so all the different moving parts, and the biggest pay-per-view of the year, Halloween Havoc, is a disaster, Conrad. You laid it out well. The only thing that I didn't get to do was swing at an elderly person. But, it was one of those things that too many stories, too many moving parts, and it just came off horrible. Horrible.
Did you ever consider not using the guitar? Did you think the guitar, I'm just wondering, was that a Russo thing or is that a Jeff Jarrett thing that, hey, the guitar's over, I'm keeping the guitar? Was it because, and I realize now in hindsight, a lot of people listening to this think, what the fuck are you talking about? But you did not carry a guitar to the ring up until the most recent WWF run, it didn't happen.
Correct.
You weren't a guy who debuted with a guitar gimmick. It evolved into, hey, we had success with the guitar. So I think it's a fair question to think, did you ever consider not using it in WCW?
I absolutely had conversations and thoughts, and can we just give it a rest? Because again, having the luxury or the curse, but anyway, growing up around it, if you just give it a rest for a few weeks or a few months or longer than that, what's old will be new again if you let it breathe and give it time. But it was like literally the crutch, and we chuckle about it. And you look at the old WCW Nitros and Thunders and a pickup truck full of guitars and this and that. And it was like, the old Russo saying, and again, we'll style this out, I'll do respect. Oh, the belt's just a prop. Well, guess what? The guitar is just a prop. But if you view it as just, it's the only problem I ever had with using, I never had a word using prop. It's
Yeah.
So it kills it. It absolutely, because we are in a business of perception and entertainment, and you can't have 50 leading actors. There's one. Same thing. You can't have 50 props. You can, or they'd mean nothing. The belt is the lead centerpiece of the promotion. And for my character, if I swing the guitar every week, it's just like a headlock. It's just like a drop kick. It's another high spot in the match. And I'm not trying to go old school and say, you know, you can't do 5 dives here. I'm not getting into high spots and everything. I'm talking about finishing move and protecting it. And yes, the guitar, these were the early stages of it being way overdone.
So let's talk about this same show. Hogan lays down for Sting, just like you would for him months later. Sting and Goldberg have a weird WCW title match that happens, but isn't really for the title. This is a mess creatively. Do you have a writing partner for shows yet? I mean, are you talking to somebody after the show between towns? You're off to Phoenix for Nitro, and I'm just wondering, do you remember if you traveled with anyone from Vegas to Phoenix?
Oh man, that's a flight. If I remember. No, I mean, you know, these early days, gosh, Scott Steiner was the best. Quick little, just to dovetail back into your story. At that time, during that time, roll in, get off the plane. Avis and Hertz and National or whoever else better watch out, because every Cadillac on the lot would be gone, because everybody's contract got luxury cars in their deal. So when WCW would come to time, every luxury car would be rented. You pull into the Marriott or the Westin or whatever it is, and that's all you would see. So everybody had their own car. So no, the short answer is I can't say that I had a riding partner day one. If ever during this run, there was a bunch of us that would, it just depended upon the routing and Nitro Thunder or live events or whatever it may be. But no specific riding partner at this time.
So the next day, the creative takes another turn. They announce that because of everything that happened the night before, they're going to vacate the world title. And now they're going to announce a 32-man title tournament that will end at Mayhem. You come out and interrupt the Nitro girls, say the tournament's a work and you're going to win because you're the closest to the powers that be. And Russo starts calling himself the powers that be and uses his voice for these vignettes as the people in charge. Maybe a little homage to George Steinbrenner on the Seinfeld program on NBC. What'd you think of this creative coming out and, hey, the tournament's a work, I'm going to win. I'm the closest to the rider.
Never been a fan of it. And doing the research, when I saw a 32-man, I just like, is that real? Like, was there really a tournament? So we're going to have, you know, prelims and sectionals and quarterfinals. And I mean, we're going to have a lot of matches that mean they're just building blocks. Oh, wait for the last match. Oh, just terrible. But no, I've never been a fan of the insider stuff. I think people, even the people who get it and understand it, it takes you out of the moment. It takes it out of context. There's no emotion into it. Oh, we're going to try to write something clever as opposed to creative. It just doesn't, never resonated with me. Never thought there was money in it. And this is another episode that we headed into that it was just way, way, way too insider talk.
We want to suspend our disbelief, and it sort of takes you out of it. Let's play the promo though that you did that day. Let's take a listen. I think this is on YouTube as the I Am the Chosen One promo. If you want to check it out, let's take a listen.
I beg your pardon. This is totally uncalled for. Back up, girls, or I'll stroke each and every one of you. And that includes Kimberly, too. Wait, Jeff Jarrett. Yeah, that includes you too, Kimberly.
Yeah, get away too, Jeff Jarrett.
Get the hell out of here.
And that guitar. Elizabeth knows all too well what he'll do to him.
Now, first of all, let me say this. This tournament for the WCW title isn't just coincidental. No, it's all a big plan. It's all a big work. You are looking at the next WCW World Heavyweight Champion. And you can bet all your stock options on that one. You see, I am the chosen one. And there isn't a damn thing anyone can do about it. And that includes Buff. A total package. Unless you want to take the next Lex Express right out of town, you best be ready to apologize to me. The fact is, Lex, I didn't take Liz out, and I don't appreciate being accused of anything. If you got a beef, son, you need to take it up with the new powers that be.
Some very bold and very shocking statements from Jeff that hit him last week.
Listen to it back. What do you think?
When I heard that about the line about stock options, it's like if you didn't really understand the stock options reality, the real situation, it isn't that big a deal. But the ones that maybe were aware of it, it was like, oh, okay, so we're trying to take a jab up north, which has zero payoff. I just think it's a distraction. To even the ones that knew, it's a distraction because you're taking a jab or a shot or whatever you want to call. There's just no payoff to it at all. And I think in today's culture and environment, I think it's maybe a lesson to be learned. What is the real upside to it? Oh, so you get a little, oh man, he's saying this against his former place of employment who paid him a lot of money and he signed the contract willingly. It just, it resonates of just bad writing and bad TV and bad creative and no payoff.
It's a good crowd too. 8,160 fans there in Phoenix. The show is a 3-hour episode of Nitro, which we know is just tough. And it got a 3.2 rating, 3.25 actually.
Jesus.
Watching that video back though, I'm curious. It made me just naturally have to ask this: who was your greaser in WCW?
Come again, sir?
Who was your greaser? There's no way you could oil up your whole back like that without a little help from some friends.
Buddy,
you were putting big shavers in business. You were hairless and shining all over. And this I think is go ahead.
I don't have back hair, sir. None.
No, I'm not talking about that. You had like eyebrows down. You had no hair. And then so you gotta have.
I had to go deep, but go ahead.
And then you got this shit that makes you shiny all over your body. Yeah. You've got some sort of oil all over you.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, as wrestler protocol, who's your go-to on your greasing?
Okay, let me ask you something, Conrad. Have you ever seen someone oil up using a concrete wall?
No.
Let me give you a little inside baseball.
You put it on the wall, and then you rub against it.
Bingo.
See, I've seen Tracy Smothers ask a kid to shave his back before, so I just put 2 and 2 together.
I've seen Buff Bagwell ask his.
That's another story for another time.
But no, the wall is that to me is the best way to go about it.
So you're telling me in arenas all over this country, this great nation,
yes,
there probably are greasy walls, and it's because of you damn wrestlers.
Not just this country. I would say
the world
perspective. Yes.
there are greasy walls because of pro wrestling.
Yes. And you see these guys sometimes that put on these not surgical gloves, hospital gloves, the latex gloves.
Yeah.
That they'll all folks up, hey, come put some all on. Oh, let me go get these latex gloves. And I think to myself, bless their heart. But they do.
Just it on a wall, guys. We're gonna leave.
Bunch of damn wrestlers.
So you come down for commentary and get into an exchange with Shivani, and he says, "We saw your shtick in the WWF, and we know it's not beyond you to hit a woman." And you said, "This isn't the WWF, and I'm the chosen one." You do a run in on Lex versus Scott Steiner, try to hit Luger with the guitar, but instead hit Scott, helping Luger get the win by count out. The chosen one. So many references to the WWF. Are both of those sort of Russo-isms?
Certainly the chosen one. I think it came out of that original promo, and I don't know if Vince kept reading it, but I thought, okay, this can be a new moniker. I had to move on from Don't Piss Me Off. It was still, at that time, we didn't know at the tail end of the Attitude Era, but it was still the Attitude Era. And so the chosen one sort of fit. But the WWF references were definitely creative based from Vince and team.
Let's also reference the Minneapolis Nitro. You basically state you didn't hit Elizabeth with the guitar because that was something your quote unquote WWF character would do. I mean, at this point, why don't you just look at the camera and say, Santa Claus isn't real? I mean, I don't get this, dude.
Well, I didn't either. Don't get me started. It was such a extreme attempt of trying to be clever as opposed to creative. And I get it. It's Howard Stern and Shock TV and Shock Radio, and is a different time and a different era, and ratings were down, and it was difficult with all the different moving parts and the talent that had creative control or certainly had veto power. So what can we do? But going the insider talk week after week after week, I wasn't a fan of it, but I also kept telling, and I'm sure I voiced this multiple times, what's our payoff? Like, what is the payoff? Where are we going with this? If we're saying this isn't the WWF character, so okay, am I supposed to make people say, "Yay, it's not the WWF character," or them say, "Oh, yes, it is, pal. Yes, it is." It's just, what's the upside to it? I never, ever understood that.
So later on, Luger and Liz come out and apologize to you about the guitar. You start ripping on Ming for taking so long to defeat Medusa, who you referred to as being 50. And you say that Ming is a wuss. So, of course, Ming comes out, you run off, and then Luger beats him up with a tire iron, because why not? So now the Luger feud you were in, I guess, is over, and now you're on to Ming. Crash TV, bro. Next up, you defeat Booker T in the first round of the WCW World Title Tournament on the show. It's actually your first match back in WCW. And who knew that you and Booker are going to be dance partners for a long time here in WCW? What do you remember about your first match?
Booker has always been a very hard-working, super athletic, great timing, and hey, man, he'd lay it in. I mean, you knew you were in a match with Booker every time. But Booker was a guy who you have to, I knew in 96 when I was there. I mean, he came to work and took it serious and played hard. I mean, he just got it done. And so guys like Booker, I always tried to gravitate toward, because he took it serious and said to himself and others, I want to do what's best for the show, and we'll get it done. So yeah, I remember, those times before we really got going that Booker, he brought it, man. He absolutely brought it.
The show gets a 3.2 rating, so it's holding steady. The paid attendance is 6,632. Now, don't get me wrong. While we're saying, hey, that's not that bad, the WWF is still selling business, selling out arenas everywhere they go. They're running larger venues and they're selling them out. In Indianapolis on November 8th, it's you versus Kurt Hennig in the second round of the tournament. But first, let's get to the backstage politics. Meltzer would say, one insider described it as attempting to do too much and paying the price. In hindsight, and we know that's always 2020, but was that a fair criticism of Russo at this time? He was maybe trying to do too much and as a result, couldn't really focus on anything.
Trying to think how to say this. Without question, it's a fair analogy. Not only just trying to do too much, I think the realization of his reality, of his job, that, look, he wouldn't have ever found this out had he not left the Vince McMahon culture and went to another culture. He would have never found this out. He had to find it out, but unfortunately, it's up to him if he considers it, find it out the hard way. But walking into this scenario where he's an employee of WCW and he's working with 1099, very high paid, very slam dunk contracts that they didn't have to listen to Vince. No matter how nice he was or not nice he was, or how political savvy he was or unpolitical savvy he was, it didn't matter. If they didn't want to do it, they weren't going to do it. And so no matter how good a creative he thought he may or may have, it was irrelevant. And so he continued down that road of, okay, that ain't going to work, I'll try this. If that didn't work, I'll try this. And just story after story after story after story. So fair analogy from Dave.
Let's recap here before you and Kurt get in the ring, and follow along, boys and girls. This is going to be tough. Okay. Medusa, who was taken out of the tournament by Ming last week, is back in due to injury, and she's scheduled to face Chris Benoit. But you run out and interfere to cause her to lose. So you make sure she's eliminated from the tournament by getting her disqualified against Benoit, and then you cut a promo stating that the powers that be came up with this plan to get her out of the tournament, and now you've screwed her. And then Ron and Don Harris, they're part of Creative Control here. I guess this is like the Stooges from the WWF. It's Ron and Don Harris, Creative Control. They're going to wrestle Booker T in a handicap match, and you interfere because you're on commentary and they get disqualified. When Russo tells you that the Harris brothers are going to be put with you as your healers, or heaters rather, is that something you're excited about? Like to have, I know you've been friendly with these guys, and we know in WCW, they're going to be a big part of what or TNA rather. It'll be an even bigger bond than friendship, but were you excited that, hey man, I'm seemingly in every segment here. I've got lots of, I'm rubbing up against Booker T and Buff and Lex and Elizabeth and Medusa and Booker T. And hey, now I've got a couple of monsters with me. Even if it's not exactly maybe creatively the way you would have hoped it went down, it does mean they're spending some time on me, right?
For sure. And Ron and Don, you've just documented the history and met them first in 86 when they first broke in. We broke in essentially at the same time. Patrick and Gerald were their working names, and Creative Control and Chosen One. You could see where Vince was going at this time. I didn't know that he was going to be, Vince Russo was going to be an on-screen character, but that whole vibe and the way it was headed and that direction and everything that went with it. And, I'll give you my little inside baseball. So those guys were told to get black shirts, black belts, black slacks, all this. And that time they were being put on the road, and I don't know if they hadn't been working for a while, what their situation was, but one lived in Florida, one lived in Nashville, and I forget which one. I'm not sure if it was Conrad. They're identical twins. They both went to different department stores, but bought the same suitcase, the same pants, the same shoes, same everything, and had not contacted each other or had any discussion. Just went out. I thought that when I see that old footage of them, For whatever reason, that's the first story I think of. But no, it was cool. I thought it was going to be a cool. I was, yes, what you said. It laid out. Okay, the chosen one. They're going with this direction, which is a good thing.
Is it too much of the good stuff? Do you think that, just like Vince McMahon had the Stooges and Gerald Briscoe and Pat Patterson, that now Vince Russo is going to be the power that be here, and he's going to have a couple of quote unquote Stooges known as creative control, but specifically we're going to call them Patrick and Gerald. I mean, this feels like, an homage almost to when Vince McMahon named Mike Jones Virgil after Dusty Rhodes. And then of course, when quote unquote Virgil jumped to WCW, they named him Vincent after Vince McMahon. Are we getting a little too cute? Do you think? Are we too focused on the other product and not enough on our own?
Are we getting a little too cute or a lot too cute?
Yeah. Well,
way too cute. Oh, it's just terrible. But, they were never, Pat and Jerry and the lineage of how good of in-ring performers they were, that you flipped the script and you made them legitimately playing the roles of Stooges. That wasn't Ron and Don's character. They were big badasses, 6'7" identical twins that could do some really good, simple, devastating moves. They were my heavy that I could take the bumps and do the coward bump taking heel, and they would be the heavy. They weren't going to be playing the role of Twiddledee and Twiddledum at all. So the inside baseball of Patrick and Gerald gave them that Stooge moniker, but the characters presented on screen were not Stooges.
So the future Midnight comes out to save Booker T. And of course you hit her with a guitar, which is something your WWF character would do. You would defeat Henning later in 5 minutes and 18 seconds by count out when Ron and Don come out and attempt to put Henning through a table, but the table doesn't break. And the referee watches them beat the shit out of him. And then the referee counts him out. So the fix is in, boys and girls. And there is an uptick here in Indianapolis. We're to a 3.3 rating, and we've got over 8,000 paid here, 8,134 fans in attendance. On the next night, or the next Nitro rather, you defeat Buff Bagwell to move now to the semifinals of this world title tournament. The match only goes 2 minutes and 3 seconds, and Buff hits Don Harris with a guitar, and you end up debuting the Stroke, which is a reverse Russian leg sweep, is what Meltzer would use to describe it. Is that pretty much the way you would describe it?
Yes.
Just a forward Russian leg sweep.
It is a forward Russian leg sweep. So yeah. And just a little side note, people, I know they're following along, but these are 1999 houses and ratings in, mid to late November, December. Still, it just jars my memory on who would have thought in less than 24 months that this place would be closed down.
It's unbelievable.
It really is, still to this day when you think of it in that kind of context.
It's the Jeff Jarrett effect is what I call it here at the house.
I know. And I appreciate you, bringing that to light. This guy, Kate said, just a little sidebar. Scott Roskay walks up. He's having a good time and he's naming different episodes. And we had a good talk about 83 weeks and just chumming it up. And he said, Jeff, I just got one more question to ask you. I said, well, fire away, pal. We broke bread here. You've got an autograph. You got picture of the Queen. Karen was there with me and all that. We were chummy. He says, you ever get aggravated, Conrad? He just loves to bust your balls. And I said, it makes for a good time. He said, no, seriously. I said, well, let me ask you, does it ever aggravate you? He said, it does. And I said, that's what you really wanted to say.
Well,
anyway,
that's what tickles me is you and I bust each other's balls 24/7. That's the nature of our relationship. And I think when people hear me do it here on the show, they think, boy, these guys must really hate each other. I mean, guys, we're laughing. We're having a good time. I mean, it's, but anyway, let's talk about Marcus Johnson. Everybody loves a Slick Johnson. And he's playing a heel referee here, and he's busy tying a shoe during all the interference. And you and Ron are going to beat down Buff afterwards. And then Dustin Rhodes makes the save. This is the first Nitro here in Little Rock where you debut the term Slapnuts. It's you and Mike Tenay in a backstage segment, and you call Tenay himself Slappy and use the term Slapnuts. It's bleeped out by standards and practices. Tell me about the term, why you wanted to use it. Did you get any heat for calling anyone Slapnuts? And you've even told us here on the program, it doesn't mean what we, the audience, thinks it means. Tell me about Slapnuts.
The whole sort of buzz going around, and again, different era than we currently are in so many different ways, but catchphrases, and I don't know if what the what catchphrase from Stone Cold was yet born, but there was Rock would have a new one every week, and Know Your Role, and just other guys, McFoley, and just it was just a buzz of different sayings and catchphrases. And moving on from the China storyline and getting into the Chosen One and all that, and just that word slappy, it just kind of fit. And me wanting to say, okay, got to sort of make it Attitude Era, and a slappy's a term my grandmother used. Somebody who slaps their gums together, that knows more and more about less and less every day, as she used to say. That we'll call it candidly a BS artist, yeah, I think they beeped it one time. WCW did early in its airing, and Tenay used to get a good kick out of it. I think I cracked Tenay with a guitar on an early Nitro. He actually scratched his nose real good. So, but no, it was all built out of the Chosen One character, and some way to start the promo. And again, a catchphrase that will grab people's attention, that can be marketed.
The show gets a 3.1 rating here. There's 8,271 paying fans. You've been in the company for a month at this point. How would you describe your WCW experience a month in? How would you compare it to your time in the WWF?
Culture shock. And I mean that. It was, and look how I think all of us at certain times have short-term memories, and leaving in 96, off of that, or 97, I knew that I'd wanted to go back to the WWF at the time just because of the culture of WWF. But again, we've hit it at the top of the hour. I knew it'd be best for my career to move on, but getting there and absorbing the environment, and Vince Russo and his team had his challenges, the top talent, again, Scott, Kevin, and others that I, had known for a while, and just getting the vibe across everything and seeing, there were so many different talents. God, just the roster was enormous. I knew I had my work cut out, but my delusional optimism, I knew I had opportunity, Conrad. At the very end of the day, I knew that I bet on myself. I knew I was going to have an opportunity. I just had to work day in, day out, and put the nose to the grindstone and go out and deliver, because the opportunities that the culture created was there for the taking from me or somebody else. I think Booker took advantage of it. I think I took advantage of it, because you kind of look at, this time frame where me and Booker, me coming in the door, like you like to say, just got beat by a woman, and Booker coming out of the tag team, and you sort of fast forward 18 months, I think we seized the opportunity. And I think a few others did as well. And others, high dollar paid guys, just cash that checks, and rightly so, but can't really say it was sort of some of their stellar in-ring work for their career longevity. But anyway, a month in, I knew that I had a lot of opportunity out in front of me, because there was a lot of chaos.
It seems like you're kept off of Thunders here, at least in the beginning. Is there a reason for that you know of, or was it them simply trying to, pick their spots with your dates? Or
I had no idea, and I wasn't happy. I knew that I wanted to work as much as possible, put me on everything. And look, Vince is writing a show, and I don't know if they had two different writing teams, but they had so much talent. Conrad, at the end of the day, that was why I wasn't on Thunders. I wasn't the only one. And I don't want to say it was A and B talent by any stretch, but they had to give the entire payroll roster slots. And so they had to, not everybody could be on both shows, although I wanted to be.
Got it. So you're not working the house shows either. Not that WCW was working them, a lot of them at the time. One of the bigger events in WCW is what we're talking about here today. That's the title of the show, Mayhem 1999. It's their first pay-per-view from Canada, and you're going to be in the opener against Canada's own Chris Benoit. What's the story of the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey player?
Oh, man. You know what an enforcer is? Sure you do.
I do, yeah.
The guy who fights out on the hockey. Ty, not big in stature, but a badass on the skates, on the ice. And he was the fighter and well-known. And, unless you're, and look, I got educated on this, and this is probably right at the beginning of my hockey education, but Toronto and hockey, it's like the Steelers in football as far as their fan base. It's like season tickets year after year after year, and coming from Maple Leaf Gardens, but the new Air Canada Center. Anyway, he was an enormous star across Canada, but specifically in Toronto. And Ty was the fighter, and so in a lot of ways, WCW was red hot. They were entering into Canada. They were the new promotion up there. Vince had run for years and years and years, and now WCW and Nitro, and it took off. So I don't say this was new territory, but in a lot of ways, Conrad, it was. This is, if not the first show, but one of the first shows, the first pay-per-views. WCW hadn't been in Canada much, and this was an opportunity. And so I remember this was a hell of a show. It was a hell of I'll say a really incredible atmosphere. I won't go any further right now. I'll let you get into it. A couple of different things happened out of this show, but what a vibe, what an atmosphere, and having the enforcer and Ty, it just fit.
The Observer would break down the match. Benoit gets the win, 9 minutes and 27 seconds. It's the semifinals. He gave it 3.5 stars. There was a lot of talk ahead of time, at least rumor and innuendo online, that based on the way the creative had been, that you're the chosen one and blah, 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 and that we're in Canada, maybe it'll come down to you and Brett. Ultimately, you lose here to Benoit, but it's a pretty strong match. I think this is your first time working him in a couple of years. I think y'all wrestled back in 1997 when you were dying to be a horseman and he wasn't having it. What do you remember of this match with Benoit here at Mayhem 99?
Chris's tenacity, I think, his persona. And look, Chris is never going to be confused with somebody with great promo skills. No. I'll say this by any stretch. And I'll say his aura in the ring wasn't overwhelming. He looked great. But once the bell started, Chris had a way of conveying to the audience that, okay, here's a no frills guy that can tie you in a pretzel, like tie you up. And, he knew mat wrestling. He knew hard, strong style, but I'll say adapted because I think a lot of his formative years were in Japan, but he had created it was a Chris Benoit unique skill set style. And so, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. He's in Canada. He's hard hitting. We're on early. He can bump me around. We're going to get a hell of a reaction. And we did. It was one of those matches that I knew going in, this thing's going to click. We got all the pieces of the puzzle to make it work. And his in-ring skill set was, to me, so unique, and it just set him apart. He wrestled different than Eddie or Dean or, that group of talent. Chris had his own style, and it set him apart.
Meltzer liked it. He says, it was explained that this was the opener because the powers that be wanted Jarrett to be rested for the finals. This was a hard-working sprint in front of a hot crowd. Benoit used moves like a tornado DDT and a superplex off the top rope in the opening minutes and got a near fall with a triple German suplex. The crowd was hot until Creative Control came out, which actually killed the heat. Benoit did a diving headbutt, but Ron Harris interfered to break up the pin and attacked Benoit outside. Jarrett used the reverse Russian leg sweep, aka the stroke, but Dustin Rhodes, with a bald head, I guess to look like a third Harris twin, made the save. In the melee, Benoit cracked Jarrett with a guitar for the pin. Creative Control and Jarrett all attacked Benoit after the match to soften him up until security ran in. Jarrett bled from the guitar shot. So some interference in the opening match. Maybe it wasn't necessary. Maybe it would have been a better match with you two without it. But we're telling stories here. What'd you think of the match? How bad was the guitar shot? Do you think it would have been better without all the gaga, as Pat Patterson used to say?
I love how Dave says it killed the heat. No, it didn't. It ruined his star rating system, or what, if you will, as far as a execution performance. But as far as storytelling in a match, and we're on first and we're coming out of the gate and getting Dustin involved and Creative Control and using the guitar and a hot opener and all that. I remember, well, let me get to that. I loved it. I thought it went very well. You can watch it back and see the crowd reactions. And yes, by design, when they saw Ron and Don walking down, are they supposed to cheer, Dave? Conrad? I mean, no, they're going to like, oh, here comes the DQ. Well, we made them happy and put the babyface over, a Canadian over in his home country and everything that went with it. But here's a little, the story behind the story. So if you watch it back, Chris is left-handed and swung it uniquely. And to this day, I don't know if that was the reason, but I think when you're expecting a tar shot coming from one way and he comes from another hand, anyway, cracked me. Not saying that's the reason I was busted open, but it was a pretty stiff shot, but adrenaline going. It was a hell of a match. I was excited. Just that whole vibe, 12,000, 10,000 people, whatever it was. It's what we did, and went to the back and got out and showered and all that. And after the show, we went back, me, Ron, and Don, and checked in, and we were going to go out to dinner, whatever it was, and go out. And I can remember getting back to the room, and they were going to be a bit, and I laid down, Conrad, and I'd finally, I'm sure I probably had a few Rocky Mountain spring waters, and I can remember just sort of decompressing. I was going to lay down, and Conrad, when I went to get up, I was in crazy kind of pain. And it's not that I couldn't get up. I didn't want to get up, and my neck and back had locked up. And I can remember like scooting on the bed over the phone and getting the receiver, didn't use a cell phone. Maybe it was probably in that time. Hell, I don't want to use any minutes. God, people don't even relate to that. Didn't want to burn up any minutes because I was in an international market. But anyhow, I called the hotel phone. I said, guys, I ain't going nowhere. I can't move. And they laughed. And I said, okay, get a room key and come in my room. I ain't coming to the door. I'll call the front desk and tell them. And I was locked up in the room, and I don't think you could classify it as a stinger, but I can remember asking them, hey guys, I'm not kidding. Bring me some ice. Just crazy what we did, just the thought process. I didn't call a trainer or whatever, but I can remember being up the majority of the night, icing it, and in between icing but man, I could not, it was killing me. And I don't know if it was the way Chris swung it or I tensed. I don't know. Anyway, that's my story behind the story of the guitar shot.
And to think you did that to Moolah.
An elderly woman.
An elderly.
She's an elderly folk.
I'm glad you're okay. I gotta assume you went to bed and you felt a little better the next day, and eventually it worked itself out.
It worked its way out, but that night I locked up with it. Yes, I did. But I iced it, finally got the swell anyway. But I was up all night getting ice.
I think you could argue this might be one of the best opening matches on a WCW pay-per-view since Ray and Eddie and Halloween Havoc. I mean, this is a really good match. I wish there wasn't so much interference and gaga, but still, the wrestling piece was really, really good. And before
superplex in the opening match.
I mean, come on, a triple German and super, yeah.
What the hell is Benoit thinking?
Well, you're giving this Canadian crowd what they want, and he probably thinks since we're doing so much Gaga, let's give them some hard hitting wrestling they'll remember too.
Yeah.
Before the next match starts, you beat up Disco Inferno before his cruiserweight title match against Evan Courageous, because why not? Everyone hates Disco. And this is not the last time you're on the show. Vince Russo, I'm sorry, I mean the powers that be, are backstage with you, insulting you for blowing your shot at the WCW title, and they tell you that you need to prove yourself. And then you're walking backstage with Patrick and Gerald in a 2x4, which I guess is gimmick infringement from Mr. Duggan. You attack Bagwell before his match with Kurt Hennig. Bagwell winds up defeating Hennig, and Hennig is now supposed to retire, which he does for a whole day, and then he's back in WCW. And before the match, you beat up Hennig as well. I'm not sure that any of this makes sense, but eventually Scott Hall and Booker T face off for a double title match. It's US and TV title on the line here. And Scott Hall defeats Booker with you and Creative Control's help. So it feels like, in case you're keeping score at home, Jeff is feuding with everyone. You've got heat with everyone, you know, including the elderly. You're overbooked on this show. You're overexposed on this show. Are you not?
Yes. And that happened multiple times. And I got it. Again, I was a guy that could run the play, but it was too many guitars, too many segments. Nothing meant nothing. But again, to Russo and his team's defense, the political games and unrest and the chess playing, God, what a mess. What a mess.
Midnight makes her first official appearance and saves Booker T after the lights go out and clears the ring. And I guess you're programmed with another woman. I don't know why that keeps happening, but the show ends with Bret Hart and Chris Benoit having a really good match for the vacant WCW title, which Bret goes on to win. You and Eric Bischoff recently watched the Owen Hart tribute, which took place a couple of weeks before this, over at adfreeshows.com. Everybody can check that out. Did you have a preference in the two matches, Benoit and Hart here at Mayhem 99, or the tribute match to Owen? Did you have a preference personally?
You know, the tribute match had a lot of time. The tournament match didn't. The emotion behind, the location behind, and, you know, I had a lot of fun with Eric. Hearing his perspective, and I thought to myself, I'm going to put my, I'm going to put my ad-free family member hat on. Listening to that and hearing Eric's perspective on Bret and sort of my perspective on Kemper Arena and watching this, I wasn't in the organization. It was really cool, but that was a special match, just because all the emotion went into it. The tournament match, you know, a tournament of 32, not too much drama and emotion in it.
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. Do you really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket, so what are you waiting for? Hurry to savewithconrad.com. The show itself draws 12,119 paying fans. It gets 200,000 buys, which is a lot. I know a lot of people would say, oh, well, the WWF at the time, and I hear you, but not a lot of pay-per-views these days are getting 200,000 buys.
And this is what month? December.
November of 1999, November 21st. Either way, though, you know, we're the holiday season is the point you're trying to make.
And Survivor Series is the other one. I was trying to think. I was going to say it followed Survivor Series. Okay. Same month as Survivor Series.
Same month. And, you know, No Mercy, which was the pay-per-view the prior week or the prior month for the WWF in October, did 330,000 buys. I want to mention the next night on Nitro, you're at the Palace of Auburn Hills, and you are, for some reason, rewarded with a WCW title match against Bret Hart in his first defense. I say for some reason, clearly we know why, you're doing all the powers that be's bidding. And you hit Brett with a guitar, you steal the title belt and set up a match that you're ultimately going to lose in 8 minutes and 37 seconds after Dustin Rhodes attacks you to cause you to lose. And it feels like you're starting to catch some steam. You call Bret Hart Slapnuts, and there are signs everywhere for it in Detroit. Your first, 6, 7, 8 weeks here? I mean, less than that. My goodness, the run you've had here just right away in WCW. It's interesting to look back and think about it with the benefit of hindsight. If you had to describe your first handful of weeks here, could you do it in a word?
Oh boy. Well, the simple one is Mayhem, the title of this episode. But Slapnuts is another single word. I don't want to use it elderly, but no. One word for this first 4, 5, 6 weeks. I have to use 2: culture shock.
Yeah. Because
the audience, knowing what they're trying to digest is all the inside baseball, as you refer to that, the 2 different locker rooms, the real understanding of, we'll call it the Millionaires Club, the culture of WCW Live that we're getting in. That was new. That was so new in those times. We're literally doing, this isn't something of a fan chat room. This is a promotion. A huge Time Warner, whatever you want to call it, they're running a fan chat show. That's groundbreaking. So yeah, culture shock would probably be an appropriate way. You know, at that Palace of Auburn Hills, when I looked up and saw Slapnuts, and there were 8, 10 guys that had spelled it out. Each, one guy had an S, one guy L, and on down the line. I said, okay, the catchphrase caught fire. I felt good about that. I said, okay, we can monetize this. It's off and running.
A couple of questions here, then we'll wrap this one up. JJ Head PR of #TheDistraction, whatever that means, on Twitter says, what was the big main difference in the first month of going back to WCW in 99 compared to the first few months in 1996? That's interesting to think about this company just 3 years apart, 96 versus 99. Was there a big noticeable difference your first day in or your first, month or 2 in each time?
Yes. When I got there in 96, the vibe of, which had never been done, props to 83 weeks and props to everything. Wow. The team that produces WrestleMania every year is number 2. Really? So that's 96, 97. That was revolutionary. It was groundbreaking. The NWA and Hulk and Savage and Hall and Nash. And then fast forward to October 99, chaos. From the day I got there, I knew and felt and observed, okay, unorganized is a nice way of saying it.
Justin wants to know, at what point did you realize you had boarded the Titanic?
Good question, actually, or good comment, or however you want to say it is, because candidly, I didn't think I boarded the Titanic, and I don't think anybody there really can safely and honestly say, oh, that thing's going to sink. Now, it was taken on water, and there's a lot of issues, but it's a big difference when you have a family of the McMahons that run a business as opposed to a corporate entity that you got to, in my perspective was Turner went from Turner to AOL Time Warner, and it was doing good ratings. And yeah, okay, so guys maybe weren't fitting the budget. That's all correctable. So not in my wildest dreams did I think it would be game, set, match. But little did we know, a lesson to be learned, that when TV executives get a bad taste in their product, it's over. It is absolutely over. And we'll get into that on another episode. So I didn't think it's the Titanic, Conrad.
Well, next week we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about Turning Point 2006. We'll talk about AJ Przinsky, David Eckstein, Dale Torberg. I know you're wondering who the hell they are. They're Major League Baseball players. We're also going to be talking about the Voodoo Kin Mafia making $1 million challenge to Paul Levesque and Michael Hickenbottom for a shoot match. The Paparazzi Championship Series. Oh, and Kurt Angle loses on pay-per-view just 2 months into the company. And lest we forget, Eric Young and Tracy Brooks in a bikini contest. It's all things Turning Point 2006. Jeff, let's put a bow on this week's episode. What'd you think? Reliving Mayhem 1999, your whole WCW experience here when you first jumped ship.
You know, the Vince McMahon line, never say never. Walking into that, again, I not to be repetitive, I knew I had a lot of opportunity, had no idea the chaos that was going on. But it's our industry. It's it in a nutshell. Those first 4 to 6 weeks, coming off that hot angle with China and the payoff and everything that went with it, and walking into this, I have to say there's a reason why, Conrad, you were a young tyke and a huge fan and attracted to this business as a uber successful businessman. There's just something unique about our industry, and me, a third generation and growing up, and the territories and the WrestleManias and all that, and get to WCW, and any sane person would go, this is insanity. I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm going to go crazy. What does old Jeff do? I love this stuff. This is chaos, and there's a lot of opportunity here. It's crazy, but it's in my blood. It's literally in my blood, and the ups and downs and all in between. Wouldn't change it for a world.
And we'll be talking about it next week. I can't believe this is real. Turning Point 2006. But Jeff, in 2 weeks, we're doing something a little different. We're going to talk about Super Clash 3. You nervous, anxious, excited? That was a weird time in your life, wasn't it?
Yes. Vern Gagne, the Von Erichs. Oh boy, Eric Embry, Kerry Von Erich, Jerry Lawler. I mean, that was Conrad, 1988, a kid. I was getting to go to Chicago and wrestle. I mean, I loved it. I'm always excited for these episodes. It'll be good. That'll be a lot of fun to revisit that and the matches, and Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin, and good God Almighty, it's going to be fun. Turning Point's going to be fun. The bikini contest, a lot of fun.
A lot of fun coming your way. Tell your friends, if you haven't already, about your new favorite wrestling podcast. It's My World on YouTube.com. That's the best way to introduce them to clips. And of course, if they dig the show, man, let them know to hit the subscribe button. Leave us a 5-star review if you think we've earned it. And I'd sure be glad to have your business over at SaveWithConrad.com. And Jeff would be glad to see you buy some swag over at BoxOfGimmicks.com. As a reminder, you can get all of our programming here early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. And Jeff, now's an excellent time to gift a subscription. Maybe you've got a wrestling fan in your life and you're not sure exactly what to buy them for Christmas. How about a little adfreeshows.com subscription? It's probably the best value in wrestling. I'm sure you agree.
Ad-free family. Do you know how many conversations I had this weekend at WrestleCade about the ad-free family?
Probably a lot.
Oh my gosh, because everybody had a good time. There were 2 and 3 generations, obviously, that walked through the door, and they get to handsome Jimmy Valiant and Bill Dundee were there, Conrad. And then you have Danhausen and up and coming guys. I get to see Shannon Moore, but literally talent in their early 20s all the way up to in their 70s. It's something about our business, but that's WrestleCade is once a year. WrestleCon is once a year. I'm going to push your buttons and get Starcade, but those are just like weekend events. In the ad-free family, literally every week, multiple times a week, you get the opportunity to stay, whether it's, look, I don't know all the stuff that I do. I know quite a bit of it, but the ad-free family, literally you get to live the nostalgia or the current product or a little bit of everything in between weekly. And so we'll call it WrestleCade around the year, WrestleCon around the year. It's a lot of fun. It's the best value in sports entertainment today.
Check it out, adfreeshows.com. And Jeff, I think next week we're going to do something kind of special. We're announcing our very first live show of 2022. As the Rumor and Innuendo go, Eric Bischoff's going to join the party too, and we're bringing it to St. Louis just in time for Royal Rumble weekend. We'll have all your ticket information next week, but buddy, we're going to have some fun. Eric Bischoff, Jeff Jarrett in the same place, telling stories you can't hear on the podcast. Sign me up.
Oh boy. I was going to say, strap your seatbelt on. No, it's going to be fun. Me and Easy E and 83 weeks in my world and best of both worlds. So it is going to be fun. Me and Eric, the sample that we've had, we've done it 2 or 3 times on ad free. There's a chemistry there that's going to be, I can say it in all due humility, very entertaining. I'll say that.
It's going to be good. Stay tuned, boys and girls. We'll be back next week. We'll have your ticket information for Royal Rumble weekend for 83 weeks meets My World. And of course, that's happening St. Louis Royal Rumble weekend. And we're going to talk about Turning Point 2006 right here on My World.
Peace.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you can notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.